third meeting of this committee. I would like to make a special welcome today to our guests from the Assembly of First Nations. National Chief Perry Bellegarde is here with his Chief of Staff Dale LeClaire and his advisor Max Fineday. I understand you're going to give us a presentation for which we're very grateful, and we think we'll have that go around 20 minutes or so. And then we would like to, if that suits you, we can stretch it either way if you need to. And then we're going to create an opportunity for some good discussion and questions from the committee members afterward. There's water and coffee. I see there are some cookies there. Please, everyone, help themselves. And just before we get underway, I would just like to acknowledge that we're meeting with our committee today on the ancestral lands of the Algonquin Nation. And with that, we can get underway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And nistamni papikske ne on absisi ninaskamon kakeo no temptek no akumagnak ninaskum tenwa kakeo nape wa kiskwe kakeo no chognak ninaskum tenwa. A little bit in Cree, Mr. Chairman. I just basically said I'm very happy to be here. Acknowledge the men and the women, all my friends around the table. A heartfelt thank you for the welcome here. And I have a bit of a presentation to go through on behalf of our Assembly of First Nations, so I'll get right into it. When I was asked to be here and to focus on certain items, certain agenda items, certain topics, but it would focus more on misconception training, and that's what people wanted to get into. So I said, okay, I can prepare a package and to talk about structure, governance, inherent rights, treaty rights, some constitutional dialogue on the time frames of things that impacted on us as First Nations people and some of the recent Supreme Court decisions, bring it on up to our recent December 10 meeting where the Prime Minister committed a certain number of things. So that's kind of the outline of what I want to get into here. So this afternoon again, the AFN, our Assembly of First Nations, is, and you have copies in your kits. It's a national advocacy organization representing 634 First Nations across Canada. And there are 58 different Indigenous languages out of those 634. So if you name a reserve, any reserve, you know, like in British Columbia, you got 203 First Nations. Alberta, you got 47. Saskatchewan, you got 74. Manitoba, you have 67. Ontario, 134. Quebec, 42. On the East Coast, 30 plus, you know, Atlantic Policy Congress of Chiefs. NWT, 40 plus in the Northwest Territories for First Nations. Yukon have 14. In total, 634. But different languages. 58 different languages. And they're unique. And I stress that. So the Assembly of First Nations is made up of those different nations, different tribes. Some have pre-Confederation treaties, some have numbered treaties, Victorian treaties, some have modern-day treaties, some are inside the Indian Act, and some are outside the Indian Act. So it's knowing who you're working with, the background, the politics. So that's what the AFN is. We have 10 regional chiefs, one from every province, you know, that sit with me as my executive. Regional Chief Ghislain Picard from the Belle Province de Quebec. He's there, sits with me. Regional Chief Dave from Ontario. So we have 10 regional chiefs. And we sit together monthly, while we have quarterly meetings. But we also bring together our chiefs of Canada twice a year, 3 days in December, and then 3 days in July. I'm elected by the 634 chiefs every 3 years. So I go to the polls July of 2018. So you're stuck with me for the next number of years. And I don't plan on going anywhere. So that's the AFN. We also have resolutions. Our chiefs give us mandates through resolutions, you know, direction, political direction. We also have chiefs committees that we have. As 10 regional chiefs, I hand out portfolios. So, for example, we're having an education forum. Regional Chief Bobby Cameron from Saskatchewan, that's his portfolio. So we have 500 people at the Delta today talking about education and what's the path forward, you know. Legislation, who holds the pen if we draft legislation so there's stable funding in place for schools and O&M operations on the reserve. All these things are being talked about. You know, healthcare, Regional Chief Day, you know. So and we have Chiefs Committees on Health, Chiefs Committee on Education. So that's our structure, you know, as Assembly of First Nations. Now, a lot of people will say, and this slide here, And I just applied it to myself from Little Black Bear. We put the Creator on top, and then the people. And all the people on the reserve and off reserve get to vote for our chief and council at Little Black Bear. So because of the Corbière decision, you remember that decision, the Supreme Court of Canada decision? No matter where you reside, whether you live in Ottawa or Toronto or Regina or Vancouver, when there's an election at Little Black Bear, I have the right to go home and vote. So there's no exclusion. The Corbière decision. So our chiefs and councils represent all their membership. It's the first point I make. But Little Black Bear is one reserve out of those 634. Then we belong to a thing called an agency, File Hills Agency. 5 reserves that work together back home. Provide our standalone police service agreement back home. We have healthcare services. We work together as 5 reserves. Star Blanket, Okonees, Pepixis, Little Black Bear, Carry the Kettle. Okay? We work together. There's no election there, but we work together to provide services. Then we belong to a thing called the Tribal Council, File Hills Qu'Appelle Tribal Council. And there's 11 reserves that work together as a tribal council back in Saskatchewan. Again, they get together, the chiefs and councils, elect a tribal chief, tribal chair, you know, however you want to call it, right? Services and programs, you know, a little bit of politics sometimes, advocacy, that's what it is. Then FSIN. Little Black Bear belongs to the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations, and there's 74 reserves in Saskatchewan, and they work together politically under that umbrella, okay? And then Little Black Bear as well belongs to the Assembly of First Nations, 634 First Nations, okay? That's what my home reserve, and why I take the time to explain this, wherever you're from as members of Parliament, you might have First Nations in your territory. Apply that to them. They'll have a similar structure. They'll have a similar way of being organized. Whether you're from Northern Ontario, or whether you're from Quebec, or whether you're from BC, it's similar. You just have to know the structure, okay? The AFN, I say, is on the bottom, not on top. That's how I explain these things. And it's an advocacy organization. It's respectful of the diversity. It's responsive to the needs that have been identified by our chiefs and leaders across Canada. And it's relevant as a national organization for bringing about policy and legislative change. Then I also put to the side, Little Black Bear is signatory to Treaty Number 4. We're part of the Victorian treaties, the number treaties. And I put that there just to show you, when we talk about inherent rights and treaty rights and self-determination, I use that as an example. We might be 4.5% of Canada's population as Indigenous peoples, but we're not ethnic minorities. We're not ethnic minorities. We're Indigenous peoples with the inherent right to self-determination. We have our own languages, our own laws, our own lands, our own people, our own identifiable forms of government. The 5 elements you need in international law for that right to self-determination to be recognized and respected. We have that. That was exercised when we entered into this nation-to-nation relationship with the Crown and right of Canada, the Crown right of Great Britain, but the Crown, now because of the 1982 Patriots Constitution, the Crown right of Canada, but treaties, nation to nation. And we used to always make this line that nations make treaties, treaties do not make nations. And that now, because we agreed to coexist and share the land and resource wealth, that we're all treaty people. Everyone in this room, including me, we're all treaty people. And so that treaty relationship we hold on to very dearly. That sovereign, that relation with the Crown is something we respect very greatly because it's a covenant. And that sanctity of contract, that sanctity of agreement is something we hold very dearly as Indigenous peoples. So it was like a shaking of a hand coming together of the Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples. When you see a treaty medallion, you see, as long as the sun shines, the waters flow, and the grass grows, you see that on the medallion. Queen Victoria is on the back of that medallion. But it's as well the Creator watching. That's why we say it's a covenant. And ceremonies were utilized in the consecration of that nation-to-nation agreement. In Treaty 4 and treaties, the nations there are the Cree peoples, the Nakota Assiniboine peoples, and the Saulteaux Anishinaabe Ojibwe peoples. 3 different nations or tribes are signatory to Treaty 4. There's 34 First Nations chiefs, right? So that's a little bit of the overview in terms of structure. Now just think about your own First Nations now. And then there's an issue of portability of rights we have to get our heads around. Because I'm not just a treaty Indian just because I live on the reserve. Portability of rights, portability of services and programs, all those things have to be contemplated now. I have the right to vote for my chief and council, but portability of rights and services and programs. 50% of our people reside off reserve, off the community. So that's an important point to raise. So I said it this morning to our officials at the Delta. When we talk about Indian control of Indian education and the need to invest in proper schools on the reserve, making sure math and science and literacy and numeracy on one hand, equally important is your languages and your ceremonial tradition on the other hand. 2 systems. Our children walk in both worlds. We need to balance that. But bear in mind as well how we need to work with the provincial governments, because 50% of our people reside off the reserves in cities. So influencing those systems in the cities and the towns as well. So that's 2 folds we need to work on. Put that as self now. The next slide, the time frame. These are important because they're part of Canada's Constitution. All these things I'm going to be talking about. And I start with a timeline with this thing called the Doctrine of Discovery. Very important. Very important. And I call it an illegal and racist doctrine. That's what I say. And there's a term I'm using now called assumed crown sovereignty, assumed crown jurisdiction, because that doctrine of discovery is coming under fire, not only nationally but internationally within the United Nations, which is why we're trying to get an audience with Pope Francis, because this is a whole story unto itself, this doctrine of discovery. But start with that piece. And then from there, the Royal Proclamation of 1763 is very important, because the Crown recognized First Nations title to land and territory. Very important piece of legislation, if you will, or an agreement. And that's part of Canada's addendums to their Constitution. And then I talk about the nation-to-nation relationship, the treaty-making process, pre-Confederation treaties, the Robinson-Huron, Robinson-Superior treaties, the number treaties. John A. Macdonald was the Prime Minister of the day. He realized he didn't have title to the territorial land, so he devised an instrument called treaties. And he tasked Alexander Morris, on behalf of the Crown, on behalf of the Queen, to go out and cut a deal with the Indians out west. So Alexander Morris was the Treaty Commissioner. Very high office. So the making of the treaties in the 1800s. And then I put in there the residential schools, which were established 1800s. Very important timeline. Very important piece of work that had a negative impact on Indigenous peoples. Then, of course, the BNA Act. Why I put that there? Section 9124. The federal government is responsible for Indians and Indian lands. It doesn't say Indians on Indian lands. Indians and Indian lands. Further recognition of title. Then I talk about the Imperial Order in Council, 1870. Part of Canada's Constitution. Basically, in English words, it says, when lands are taken up for settlement in the Northwest Territories, it doesn't say Indians are First Nations, but the Aborigines is the word they use, are supposed to be compensated on a fair and equitable basis when lands are taken up for settlement. Very important piece of work, the 1870 Order in Council. Then the Indian Act in 1876, which we still have to this day. Why I put that there is because right up until 1951, it was illegal for Indians to get access to legal counsel. Couldn't have access to a lawyer up until 1951. Couldn't leave the reserve without a permit until 1951. So the Indian Act is a big challenge for us now, but it's still there. So between the residential school system and the Indian Act, between those two things, you can see the hurt and the harm it's done to our people. including breaking up our governance system, imposing two-year elective systems, throwing out the clan mothers, throwing out our hereditary chiefs, throwing out our traditional chiefs. All of our way of governing ourselves was no good, and you impose a two-year elective system now. This Indian Act. So the challenge is, in 2016 and beyond, is what do we do now to move beyond the Indian Act? That's the big challenge for us. NRTA, 1930. People want to talk about a national energy strategy. People want to talk about resource revenue sharing. Unilaterally passed the 1930s, the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement. The federal government passed to Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Total control in their provincial boundaries over the oil, the coal, the potash, the uranium, the trees, the water, the timber, everything. Unilaterally done. Section 10 in the 1930, subject to existing trusts. This will be done. We've always maintained there's a Crown Federal Fiduciary Trust obligation. 74, the modern treaty-making process kicked in because of the Calder decision. 1975 James Bay Quebec Agreement, all those things. And then 1982, the Patriation of the Constitution, Section 35. Existing Aboriginal treaty rights are recognized and affirmed. Full box of rights or empty box of rights? What process do we utilize to fill that up? Political process and or a legal process. And then, of course, the UN Declaration, 2007. Timeline, very important, just to get the heads around the constitutional framework. Why we say there's a Crown Federal Fiduciary Trust obligation to Indians and First Nations people. That's there. Legally now, Delgamuukw and Sparrow, recent Supreme Court of Canada decisions. All members of Parliament should know all these cases. Every 338 members of Parliament should know these things I'm talking about. Delgamuukw, Sparrow, Haida, Mikisew Cree, the Marshall decision on the East Coast, you know, the treaty right to fish, commercial fish. First time ever the Supreme Court of Canada went back and made an addendum to their initial ruling because of Marshall. I just flagged these ones, some of the high-level ones. And then, of course, Chilcotin, Aboriginal rights and title. So the judicial branch of government is saying something very clearly when it comes to rights recognition. Aboriginal rights and title, treaty rights. How many Supreme Court of Canada decisions we're winning? We see that. That shows you this right here. We say these are all rights, they're minimum standards for the survival, dignity, and well-being of Indigenous peoples. No question. The issue is the judicial branch is saying this, but the legislative and the executive branch of government are not keeping up with the policy and legislative changes as dictated by this one over here. That's the challenge moving forward, that the legislative and the executive branch of governments have to keep up with what the judicial branch is saying. And that means policy and legislative changes. So, put that on the shelf now. Before October 19, we campaigned very hard in the sense of getting our issues onto all the party platforms' agendas. Everyone. I tried to get on the caucuses. I've been to the Liberal caucus. I've been to the NDP caucus. Talked to as much members of Parliament from the Conservatives as I could. Went to the Green caucus. There was a couple of people. But educating and making them aware of what our issues are and closing the gap. This was what we used. This was before October 19. 6 themes: strengthening First Nations families, communities, sharing and equitable funding, in other words, lifting the 2% funding cap that's been there for 20 years, upholding rights, Aboriginal treaty rights, respecting the environment, which means Bill C-38, C-45 to be looked at, more involvement on resource projects across Canada, Energy Board, revitalizing Indigenous languages, and the implementation of the TRC, calls to action. That was before October 19. We had the Prime Minister come to our Chiefs Assembly in December, and he committed to 5 items. And you can see the reflection. You can see the mirror almost, if you will, to what we put as priority items as Indigenous peoples. A National Inquiry. He committed to the Chiefs of Canada, the National Inquiry. So that's ongoing. Pre-consultation phase now. 3 ministers are leading that. Good process. Making significant investments in education. Very important. How do you get out of poverty? Good quality education. He also talked about removing the 2% funding cap that's been in place, which is a cap on potential, a cap on growth. The existing fiscal frameworks that exist now through the contribution agreements don't keep up with inflation, don't keep up with rising population. The fastest growing segment in Canada is young First Nation men and women, and it's not based on needs. So the gap that needs to be closed is huge. So he talked about moving that and moving towards long-term sustainable funding relationships with the Crown so that there's predictability. And he talked as well about implementing the 94 calls to action, implementation of the 94 calls to action. Very important from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And then a full review of federal law review of imposed legislation. I expand that one to include not only federal laws, but policies as well. Because the comprehensive claims policy, the specific claims policy, the inherent right to self-government policy, and the additions to reserve policy haven't been updated in 20 plus years. And they're based on flawed views on termination of rights and title, not recognition of rights and title, as referenced in those Supreme Court of Canada decisions. So it has to be not only a federal law review, but a federal law and policy review to get in line with what your own Supreme Court is saying. So there's much, much work to do going forward. And this, friends and relatives, is just an overview. And I wanted to show from one reserve's perspective, my home reserve where I grew up on Little Black Bear, how it all fits. You know, how it all fits going forward. And March 22nd, we're hoping that there will be these key strategic investments made in all these areas because it's closing the gap. And the gap I refer to, United Nations Human Development Index, Canada is rated 6th. But when you apply the same indices to Indigenous peoples, we're 63rd. That's what needs to be addressed. And more Canadians are saying that's not right. We got to make the investments in education and training and dealing with the 130 boil water advisories, potable water, the overcrowded housing, all those negative stats. That's what that gap represents. And people are getting it. So that's what we got to work on collectively together. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my Indian Studies 101. That's my misconception training or whatever. There's lots more we could have got into, but that's where I want to leave it right now. And there might be questions, comments around the table.
Thanks very much, Grant Chief. You provided us with exactly what we asked for, which was a thorough and unvarnished assessment of where we are now and the work that lies ahead. So thanks very much for that. We're going to follow the process that we've set up for this committee for questions and answers, and it may seem a little formal, but it's to ensure that everyone around the table gets a fair chance to have a question asked. And we do have a speaking order that we've developed, and we're just going to leap right into that with Michael McLeod as the first question. Oh, and I'll just say that each question in this first round has about 7 minutes. In fact, exactly 7 minutes for the question and the answer, and I'll try to police that a little bit.
First of all, thank you for coming to make your presentation to us. It's very informative. I come from Northwest Territories where, as you probably know, half the population is Indigenous, and we have 11 different languages that are spoken and many Aboriginal governments that are in the process of settling land claims or have settled and are working towards self-government, and there's many challenges on that front. And the North is quite a bit different than conditions on reserve, and we have other challenges that face us, high cost of living and things of that nature, including travel in the area that's very difficult. In your statement, in your comments that you made in December to your special Chiefs Assembly, you talked about nation to nation, a renewed type of arrangement, and our Prime Minister also stated that it's time for a renewed nation to nation relationship with First Nations people, one that understands the constitutionally guaranteed rights of First Nations in Canada are not a convenience, but rather sacred obligation. And as I talk to the different people in this government and MPs and different party members, I get a sense that there's all kinds of different interpretations. I'm also getting that sense from Aboriginal people and Aboriginal governments. So I wanted to ask you, what does that term that you use and the Prime Minister used mean to you? What did you expect when you heard that, and how do you see that working with Indigenous peoples across the country, especially your community of Little Black Bear First Nations?
Good question. Great question. That's why I put in your kits. Go back to that model. Go back to that crater on top, the people, Little Black Bear, all of that. Now apply it to each of those 634 reserves. I met with 3 chiefs this morning and asked them, are you a nation? Some chiefs will say yes. Others will get it and say no. We're part of the Cree Nation. But we've got Cree in Quebec, we've got Cree in Ontario, we've got Cree in Alberta, we've got Cree in Saskatchewan, the Nehiyawak peoples. You got Woodland Cree, Swampy Cree, Plains Cree, different dialects, right? But we're part of that. So if you're talking about a nation to nation, we're not structured by nations. Some chiefs want to go down that road, so the Dene Nation gets together. The Denisantene peoples will get organized as a Dene. The Mi'kmaq people on the East Coast will organize as the Mi'kmaq people, if you go by the nations, by the language, right? That's the ideal. We're not there yet. There's another, for us, treaty areas is coming now. Because you look at what I drew up there, the agencies, tribal councils, are creatures of the Department of Indian and Northern Affairs Canada. We didn't come together and say, hey, let's form a tribal council as Indians here. That didn't happen. It came together because of the Department of Indian Affairs and their district chief's office, district INAC offices at that time. So we have to break away from the colonization and everything else and get back to ourselves, that nation to nation, right? And some nations will go back by their language and get together and get organized in that way. Other areas will look at treaty territories coming together. So there's options. And we should maintain and reserve that right to proceed at our own pace. Because once we get organized, then we need to start engaging the Crown to move beyond the Indian Act. That's how it means to me. Keeping in line that whole vision to work towards that nation-to-nation collective. Because we're not structured and organized by nations. Right? Because we got 634 First Nations Indian Act bands in some cases, right? And so we have to move beyond that. That's the challenge right now. And we're all at different levels. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take some time to get there. So that's why I did this. I showed you this structure to give you a little understanding that we ourselves, as Indigenous peoples, have to break beyond the Indian Act and get organized how we best feel it's going to serve our needs. Okay? Make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Michael, and thank you, Chief. The next question is coming from Kathy, and I'll just let folks know that after Kathy is Charlie and then Gary. Kathy, please.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, National Chief. That was a great sort of overview refresher and really important information to start our committee's first formal meeting. I want to focus in on a specific area that I think is important to all of Canada, but also to your communities that you represent. And of course, that's the area of the natural resource development. I do want to sort of pick up on your suggestion in terms of the Indigenous license. But I also want to ask you to frame it, and I'll look at, for example, Kinder Morgan. As it goes through the interior of British Columbia, there's sort of great desire for this particular project to move ahead. So, I think if there was a process in place, it would be, there would be great enthusiasm. And of course, as you're aware, it hits the coast, and I think it would be an understatement to say the enthusiasm diminishes. But so I guess I, first of all, would like you to sort of expand on that concept that you talked about, but also expand on it as it relates to, really varying opinions. And I think we could use example after example. So how do you actually create an Indigenous license with lots of people being very enthusiastic in terms of memberships and others not being?
Good question. We just finished a 2-day energy forum a couple of weeks ago in Vancouver, and we brought together Minister Carr, first time ever, Great. Natural Resource Minister was there. Representatives from the provinces were there. First Nations leaders were there, chiefs. Industry leaders were there from pipelines, oil and gas companies. Environmentalists were there. Clean energy officials were there and CEOs as well from solar and wind. So we've tried to create a space and a table for dialogue because there's different interests, no question. The comment about Indigenous license ties in to the duty to consult and accommodate. The Indigenous license ties in to free, prior, informed consent, within the United Nations Declaration. That's what I'm referring to when I say Indigenous license. Because First Nations people, because of the right to self-determination, they're tied in. And if that right's respected, that means the ability to say yes to projects and or no. So that's where it rests. We have to be involved. And the message was simple. Before you try to build anything, industry, our provincial governments, build a respectful relationship with Indigenous leaders and Indigenous peoples. Build a respectful relationship before you build anything. That was the message. And this Indigenous license ties in with those two things. The duty to consult and accommodate, which the Crown has the obligation to do that. It's not industry. It's the Crown's obligation. And they have to do a better job of that. Because right now it's industry is wondering, what should I do? What are the rules? They don't know. And so that's where that comes in, that ties in, right?
I guess my healthcare nursing practical says at the end of the day, there's great enthusiasm and great anger, and I'm not sure how we ultimately get an alignment on that piece.
It's dialogue, Minister. It's best way, in a respectful way, is to bring people together, because you're not always going to get agreement sometimes. There's just so much diversity, but if we can respect each other's perspective and points of view and have that dialogue, respectful engagement, respectful that, we might find common ground. I've always pointed out that we've got rights as Indigenous peoples, but we also have responsibilities for the land and water. And I gave my perspective about Indigenous worldview there as well. How we're all tied together. We're all related.
So I think, you've gone through a history, a very tragic history in terms of policies over time. As agreements in British Columbia, of course, they're working towards settling agreements. And so, for example, there's agreements that need to be settled, and I think they're working in a fair direction. But by virtue of need, I guess, they are impacting either, third-party private businesses or people. And so I guess this is actually, would you agree that the Crown, in this case Canada, that there should be sort of a philosophy of sort of avoid, mitigate, or compensate, because of course I'm not sort of saying that we don't have to do this, and we do very much have to do it, but that that there should be some philosophy around, because I think we bring all Canada along if we create the least hardship for third-party interests. So I guess, does that seem like a reasonable concept that the Crown should have as they negotiate these agreements?
Look at all the above, that's part of it. Like, people, again, under the existing frameworks that they have, when you start talking about British Columbia, even when I meet with the premiers, I ask them to set up bilateral process with chiefs and leaders in their prospective provinces, so they have access. So do the 203 chiefs meet with Premier Christy Clark on a regular? They do, right? Do they have any issues about the duty consult tables on resource revenue sharing, duty consult and accommodate, free, prior, informed consent to create economic certainty? They should have those tables and processes established. I've also asked the premiers to not issue license or permit to industries if that CEO of that particular company does not have an engagement strategy with First Nations people in terms of procurement, employment, or benefit sharing. If they don't issue them a license or permit. You will see the industry start banging on First Nations leaders' doors to establish a respectful relationship. Your point about third-party interests and the Crown compensating, you'd look at everything that you can to make peace in the valley, so to speak. But as long as things are done in a respectful way, rights aren't trampled on, that rights aren't put to the side, that people are looked after. And I always say it this way, that First Nations people, of course, want to be part of the economy, and of course want to create wealth and jobs and have great employment opportunities, but not at the expense of the environment. It's balancing long-term sustainable economic development strategies. Even talking to the Chilcotin chiefs, they don't want an environment footprint this big. Smaller, something smaller, maintainable. I've talked to those. I've been up into the Chilcotin territory in BC. That's what they say. Respect long-term sustainable economic development strategies. So First Nations people want to be part of that. They want inclusion, but not at any cost.
Do I have more time?
I'm afraid we're over 7 minutes now. Look, in my enthusiasm to hear this great dialogue, I left Michael with 2 minutes still in his question. And if there is time left over in anyone's question, I'll just leave you the option we'll put it back on the clock and we'll go through the list again. Or you can choose to take the 2 minutes. So I just do want to go back and offer you that 2 minutes if you'd like them, Michael.
I had one more question.
Sure.
And I wanted to ask is about the land claims process. We have a number of Aboriginal communities, Aboriginal governments that are engaged in the land claims process, and the process up to now through the policies that are in place are not allowing for any flexibility. And I wanted to hear your views on moving forward with the new type of collaborative intentions that this government has brought forward, and if you had any suggestions that we could hear on going forward and how we can improve the process.
Just on that point again, the member of the Federal Law and Policy Review, comprehensive claims has got to be part of that. It has to be updated. And again, there's got to be a process established for that to happen. And that's going to take some time, but that's where that rests, because that comprehensive claims policy is put in place and it was based on termination of Aboriginal rights and title, not recognition. And that's what has to change. And there has to be a process established. And there's got to be proper authorities and mandates given to the representatives that are negotiating things on behalf of the Crown and First Nations governments. If they had the proper terms of reference, authority, and mandates based on a proper policy, based on recognition of title and rights, you get a lot more done. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Charlie, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Chief, so much for your coming today. I represent communities of Treaty 9, a little bit of lands from Huron-Robinson, and then my Algonquin communities that never signed any treaties and are very active in my region, and I'm very proud to work with them. There's a number of issues I want to get to, so I don't want to sound curt, but I want to focus in on it so we can get, because this is a rare opportunity to discuss. I want to start off, AFN was signatory to the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement. Part of that was the creation of the independent assessment process, which is supposed to be non-adversarial and a way of bringing closure. We've seen the St. Anne survivors. Evidence was suppressed. The hearings were jigged with lying narratives that lied. They've been in provincial court twice. I believe they're going back a third time. Now we have the administrative split. We have the issue of the day scholars. And all this is getting wrapped up really quickly. My question to you, as one of the signatories, do you believe that this IEP cannot be shut down until we get a clear answer on the justice to these cases that have been denied in such an egregious fashion? What is the AFN's views on how we deal with this, with the timelines on closing of the IEP process?
I think we need a political resolvement to the issue, Charlie, as opposed to a legal one, because it takes too damn long. And the survivors and the victims need justice sooner than later. We've supported the day scholar class action suit politically. There should be justice for them. We've talked about the split as well, and we support that there'd be a political resolvement to that issue, and we want to bring that up to the Minister of INAC as soon as possible. And she's made those similar statements that this should be resolved. Those 1,000 plus students that have been excluded should not be excluded, and there should not have to be a lengthy legal process. It's almost like the Crown's trying to limit their financial liability and obligation, which is not right. Yeah. It speaks against the apology, and it speaks against reconciliation. And so that's not acceptable. So those are the 2 points that we've got to find a political resolvement sooner than later.
Thank you. I guess just in closing, what concerns me is that if a legal process that's supposed to be arm's length, that you need political process to intervene in the legal process. There was something wrong with that legal process, and I guess are there lessons that we need to be learned from the fact that Justice Department undermine these rights time and time again?
Well, nothing is ever perfect, I always say. We learn from things and we make sure they don't happen again.
Okay,
That's
thank
the way I look at it.
I want to ask you about the important thing of closing the gap in the communities. The federal government has a 6% escalator in health that transfers to the province. Well, none of the communities I represented even came close to that. The 2% cap, even then they were down below 2%, it seemed many times. So if we're going to take this off after 20 years, it's left a massive hole in infrastructure, in health, and education. What is the bare minimum escalator that we need to assure that the monies are actually going to flow and we're not going to just get another shell game of promises one year and then the money will be slowly drawn back? The provinces have clear escalators. What would you say is the escalator that we need to not only meet the needs but also start to close that gap that's been created because of the 2% cap?
Great question. And when we met with the Minister of Finance this year, because we're trying to influence the federal budget, which is coming out March 22, we can't say that here's a 7% escalator that we need this year. But we're trying to influence every department from INAC to health to ESDC to languages and heritage and everything else. There's 7 or 8 key departments. And the operative word, I'd say, investments need to be needed in all those key areas to close the gap. What the percentage is, I'm not sure yet. I don't have the answer to that. But what's more important is the work next year that I've asked for, that there be put in place a fiscal framework working committee between the AFN and the Crown so that we get to the right number, that we can get the proper assessment, the proper analysis, the proper escalator, so that gap starts closing. Because that's really, at the end of the day, what's going to matter. Is if we start moving from 63rd up to 60 to 50 to 40, and eventually we'll get to 6 like everybody else. And there is going to be substantial amounts of investment dollars needed, billions, I'm going to say billions, in this federal budget this year. And then establish the proper process to work to the proper fiscal agreement the next year. And that's what we asked to be put in place.
Fair enough. I just think once we have to codify this in the long term so that promises of 1 year don't be forgotten in year 2. I'm interested, it was great, the little primer on Delgamuukw, Haida, we have Taku River, these obligations are really clear. I'm concerned about Site C because the Minister of Environment today said that she's been consulting the Indigenous communities affected. Well, I haven't heard of anybody on the ground who's been consulted. There's about 20 plus fisheries permits that are being rammed through right now. You've spoken up on Site C. Has anyone in the department ministry talked to you about what needs to be done to resolve this outstanding concern of the communities about the impact of Site C on their traditional territory?
Not as of this yet. We've got mandates from our chiefs to slow down Site C, and we're supporting the chiefs up there. That's our position as AFN, to slow it down, because even that's hydro, it's clean. Yeah. But even having a clean energy project affects inherent rights and treaty rights. And again, that's not acceptable. And so we've supported the chiefs and the leadership in that area to slow things down and do the proper consultations and get them involved. But so personally, I can say no, it hasn't happened with me personally. So there's still a lot of work to do regarding Site C.
Thank you. It's been 2 weeks since the Human Rights Tribunal ruling that Canada systematically racially discriminates against Indigenous children. My office is flooded with families calling me that their children were denied medical services. We see documents saying that severely handicapped children are being denied services, but they will provide the service. In the documents, federal health departments, they'll provide that service if they voluntarily give their children up to foster care. I'm asking, in light of that, has there been discussions between the AFN and the individual departments of health and justice and Indigenous affairs about how this government will break apart that systemic discrimination and move beyond the nice words I've heard, but what are the systemic changes that are actually going to be needed in the department? Have they begun to speak with you about how to dismantle this system?
A very brief answer, if you would. Thank you.
Very preliminary discussions, Charlie, are happening. So the answer is yes, but we've got a lot of work to do.
Thank you very much.
Next on the order is Gary, please.
Thank you, Mr.
This
Chair.
is Gary. Sorry, I'll just let the next round of folks know that in the 5-minute questions coming up are David and Don, and then Arnold and Remy. Thank you, Gary. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Grand Chief, and your colleagues for joining us this afternoon. I have a number of issues, and I want to just start by probing on the nation-to-nation question a bit further. And I appreciate the way you've laid out your vision of what that means. In terms of the government, do you believe that the government's on the right track, and is the government's vision in line with yours, or does the government need to look at it in a different way? I'd like to really get your deeper thoughts into that, so that we do have a very similar understanding of where we're going forward.
In terms of the nation-to-nation relationship, it's almost like you need a constitutional process, to start working towards, because in Canada you got common law and you got civil law. At one point, remember Charlottetown and Meech Lake? And First Nations governments were going to be recognized not as a third order of government, they should be recognized as a first order of government. But what's the process to get us there? There has to be a process. And that has yet to be established yet. And that's where we have to start looking and start working towards that. It's almost like a constitutional working group, if you will, involving the feds, the province, First Nations governments. You've got Section 35 that exists there since 1982. Full box of rights or empty box. The debate still goes on. So we need a process to start working towards that respectful nation-to-nation relationship. But getting First Nations governments, again, not as a third order, but I would say the first order, and having First Nations law and jurisdiction recognized in addition to common law and civil law.
In terms of the Indian Act, some have suggested that the answer is to eliminate the Indian Act. And I think in your words, you suggested that it may be a work in progress. So how do we address the challenges within the Indian Act, but to make sure that going forward and then also to link to the nation-to-nation relationship, how do we do it? And in terms of order, how do we, what order do we do it in? Do we change the Indian Act now and then do the discussions, or do we do the discussions and have a parallel process? Because I think it's a very long and complex issue, but I would really like to see how, in your vision, what you think how we should move forward on this.
In a very flexible way, in a very patient way. It's the simplest answer I can make to that. We all want to move beyond the Indian Act, no question. It's been there since 1876. It's 2016. But we need a process to move beyond the Indian Act. And that's going to take some time. And out of the 634 First Nations, everybody's at different levels. Some want to do it alone. There are other conglomerates when you come together. You can possibly look at working beyond processes to move beyond the Indian Act. But that has to be struck. Those processes have to be struck. Even in terms of treaty implementation. Treaty 3 is working together strong united. But where's the Crown to engage on a treaty enforcement, treaty implementation process? Treaty 4 is working together. Treaty 9 is working together. The Douglas treaties on Vancouver Island are working together, but they want the Crown to engage. So there's got to be processes established for that. That's how I see that. And that once that processes are established, you can start working towards moving beyond the Indian Act, but having a flexible approach and a patient approach with it. One size won't fit all.
I believe the vision, AFN's vision, one of it is with respect to education. I think you had said that First Nations do not seek better education, you seek the same, referring to the education that is provided to kids in the school system. With 50% of the population off reserve, I'm not so sure if that's adequate in terms of the school boards themselves, the kids that are part of the regular school system. How do we address it in terms of incorporating cultural sensitivities or going beyond cultural sensitivities to make sure that the young people understand their language, have access to learn their culture, and to be able to really be themselves?
Again, two-pronged process. On the reserve, you got to deal with closing the tuition gap, because on reserve it's $6,500 per child. versus the provincial school system where it's almost 11, 12,000 per child, versus the French school system where it's almost $20,000 per child for tuition. That has to be addressed. Okay, that closes the gap. So then you can pay the teachers the same salaries. You'll have access to the same extracurricular activities, math, all those things, libraries, computers, all those things can happen. Close the O&M gap, the tuition gap. Then you got to look at the capital infrastructure, the schools themselves. So that's on reserve. You got to focus there. With the off-reserve school systems, the languages are important, on reserve and off reserve, because studies have shown that once a young child is fluent in their First Nations language, by 12, 13 years of age, they're more successful in school and therefore more successful in life. Studies have shown that. They know who they are and where they come from, that their language is just as equally as important as English and French. That's validation, that's acceptance. So you got to work both on the reserve school system, but as well influence the provincial school systems. And why can't and this is why I work with the premiers, why can't they declare the Indigenous languages as official languages of the territory or state, like they do in NWT? Why can't they do that in Saskatchewan, in Ontario, in Quebec, in Alberta? That can happen. So it's two-pronged strategy. On the reserve, that's where the federal crown comes in, dealing with the tuition and the capital structures needed for schools, proper schools. Then working with the provincial systems as well, because 50% of our kids are in those systems, both in the Catholic school system and in the public school system. So that's where curriculum is very important over here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Grand Chief.
Thanks for that, Gary, and thank you, Chief. Next in the order is David, and David, we're moving into the 5-minute question and answer now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the National Chief for being here today to give us an education on a lot of things I've learned that I wasn't aware of before, so thank you so much for that. I'd like to talk about the National Inquiry. In March 2015, the Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women considered the issue of violence against Indigenous women in Canada, including missing and murdered Indigenous women. The committee expressed concern over the disproportionately high rate of Aboriginal women of violence, both in comparison with men and non-Aboriginal women. I had many discussions with Indigenous communities within my riding, and many individuals expressed that the National Inquiry should also be expanded to include missing and murdered Aboriginal men. What are your thoughts on the National Inquiry being expanded to include missing and murdered Indigenous men?
Not at this point in time.
Okay.
I think eventually we're going to get there. The whole issue is ending violence in our communities. That's the issue. This one with the missing murdered Indigenous women and girls is first, it's priority, no question. And it's higher than 1,200. It's
Yes.
greater than that. We know that. So ending violence really becomes the theme in the issue. So it doesn't only affect females, it affects males, it affects families, it affects communities. So ending violence, so that means all the thing of root causes of ending violence, which is poverty and disproportionate numbers of people in the jails, family breakups, alcohol, drug abuse, all those things, overcrowded housing, poor education, all those things have to be addressed, the root causes. That's where my head goes right away when you start talking about should it be expanded to include missing murdered men. Not right now. Focus on the women because that's where it is right now. Eventually the whole theme about ending violence is the bigger theme that has to be addressed. And that includes reviewing the whole justice system and start working towards restorative justice system as opposed to a punitive justice system. That's a whole other dialogue unto itself.
Yeah, I understand that. That's, you make it expand it too large, it becomes owner's task. And I agree with you that, but that was one of the questions was brought up during my, meeting with my different Indigenous communities, and so I said I'll bring it up, see if there's anything in the works in the future. So, and I always have been an opinion that the next generation and our future leaders should be involved in the advancement of our society, whatever level it may be. And in relation to the National Inquiry, do you feel that the Indigenous youth should be actively involved? Because I had a lot of young people come to me and say, listen, I'd like to be part of it. How do we become part of this process? And frankly, I don't know how that engagement is going to take place, but they're asking, how can I be involved? This is my history. This is my grandparents, and I want to make sure that I understand and be part of it. So I'm not sure how can I go back to them and say, this is what we can do to involve you? Is there any plans for involving the Indigenous youth?
I think well, from the AFN's perspective, we have our Women's Council, Youth Council, and Elders Council involved with our delegation when we have a second roundtable coming up in Winnipeg on Thursday and Friday. The families are front and center, no question. And that's the priority and focus. But from our delegation, we do have our youth involved through the AFN Youth Forum, Youth Council. That's one step, and so that's one way of doing it. We have to make sure that all the voices that want and wish to be heard do have a space, and so, again, in the terms of reference that are being developed, there could be a spot for that. We don't know what the terms of reference are eventually going to look like. All I'm saying is from the AFN, we've included the youth through our Youth Council.
How much time do I have left?
You got a minute?
Okay. Is there a website where the youth can go and access this information and put their ideas forward? Is there anything that they can access? Because a lot of these communities are remote and they don't have the opportunity to travel to these round tables. So maybe if there's something that I can say, listen, you can go to this site and your voice can be heard.
All on our website. I look to my officials. We have it on our AFN website, Facebook, you can use social media. So yeah, there is an opportunity for inclusion and involvement.
Yeah. Just a comment, if I may. Yeah, a lot of my communities don't have that. The internet is not the best in these communities because where they live. I mean,
Valid
so
point.
I'll try my best to relay that information, and I'll do what I can, and maybe I can express the concerns through myself and my staff back to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, David, and thank you, Chief. Next up are Don, and then Arnold, and then Remy. Don, please.
So, National Chief, thank you for attending here today. It's a pleasure to have you here. As Ontario's only First Nation Member of Parliament, I welcome you here today, and I have a million questions, but I have to stay within my 5 minutes. In my area, I represent Grand Council Treaty 3 and also Robson Superior Community of Fort William First Nation. So I want to get back to the nation-to-nation because I'm still not clear in terms of where AFN sees them fitting with helping organizations like Grand Council Treaty 3 or the individual communities. I understand that essentially you're saying you want to leave it up to the communities and the individuals. If they want a group, then so be it. Where does AFN fit in terms of helping us in terms of the federal government and help the communities along to get started in this nation-to-nation process or whatever process they decide to do?
The first point I make, and Don, it's the AFN's not a rights and title holder.
No.
Neither is the FSIN, neither are tribal councils. It's the people, the First Nations themselves are the rights and title holders. So we're facilitators. In Cree we have a word, oskapeus. We're servants or helpers. That's all we are. That's all I am. And you notice I put the AFN on the bottom, not on the top. But we can help facilitate and guide in terms of government, in terms of engagement with the Crown. Like if you're from Treaty 3, the Treaty 3 people are working together. The Grand Council of Treaty 3 is a model. But where's the Crown? Our treaties are with the Crown. And it's not enough just to have a representative from Indian Affairs come out on Treaty Day. Where's the Crown? In Treaty 4, and it's similar in all the number treaties, at a place or places appointed, you will meet with representatives of the Crown to receive your annuity payments and discuss all aspects of this treaty. That's what it says. Where's that process? So Treaty 3 is working together. They need the Crown to engage. So this is a moment for the Crown to revamp how government works and establish those processes so that Treaty 3 feels, yes, we have a relationship with it. We're working towards implementation and enforcement now. And the Crown's working with us for that, according to the spirit and intent of treaty. And that's got to be done wherever those treaty territories are working together. Robson Superior working together, starting to work together. There should be a process for the Crown to engage. That's my recommendation, advice to this committee, my respectful advice to the Prime Minister and his cabinet. Find new processes of engagement. Even look at establishing a treaty commissioner again as an independent office of the Crown, reporting to Parliament, just like the Auditor General just like the Privacy Commissioner. They're independent offices. That's how this country was founded, utilizing a treaty commissioner on behalf of the Crown, not reporting to the Minister of Indian Affairs or the Prime Minister, but to all 338 MPs on behalf of the status of these treaties. That's what should be looked at as a new way of doing things, a new old way of doing things.
How much time do I have left?
30 seconds. Have at it.
Sorry. We'll go for coffee.
Thank you for your answer. Well, perhaps with Grand Chief Warren White one time.
Yes.
In any event, the dealing with off-reserve First Nations, the First Nation people, you've touched on it a bit. What's your best advice to engage them in terms of? I know a lot of the chiefs I speak to. And I know the law, but a lot of the chiefs, whether purposely or maybe not purposely, exclude a lot of the off-reserve First Nation. What's the best way to make sure that they're part of this process? Ensure
that the fiscal resources are there at the community level so they can look after their people off-reserve. Look at school supplies, for example. The chief and council only get money for school supplies based on reserve, but half their people live off-reserve in town. In Kenora or wherever. Well, their people are going to ask it, hey, my kid's going to school in town here. They need crayons. They need books. They need all these things. Who are they going to ask? They're going to ask the chiefs and councils. And 9 times out of 10, those chiefs and councils will fund that. But they get no money for that. So ensure that the proper fiscal relationship is in place based on total membership on and off so the chiefs and councils can look after the citizens no matter where they reside. Portability of rights.
I'm probably out of time.
Sorry, yeah, I got distracted with timekeeping there. Thank you, thanks Don for the question and for the thoughtful response. I really appreciate that. Arnold, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chief Bellegarde, for being here today. It's a real privilege to be able to question a guy like you, so it's really appreciate you coming out. You mentioned in your report fundamental human rights, and I would assume that the most fundamental human right is the right to life. And as you know, there's a special joint committee studying physician-assisted suicide. Well, they've been doing that for the last 2 months. They're about to bring out their report on this, and I'm alarmed by the lack of First Nation engagement on this as well. It appears that the committee only heard from 2 Indigenous witnesses. Dr. LaFontaine is the president of the Indigenous Physicians Association of Canada, and he highlighted in his presentation, he said, and I quote, "I feel obligated to identify the absence of major national Indigenous organizations. I feel that there has not been meaningful consultations with Indigenous peoples." End quote. Was the Assembly of First Nations invited to present at this joint committee on physician-assisted dying?
The answer is no, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
The issue is lack of capacity. And a lot of times, capacity. As an organization, we've been gutted in the last 10 years. So we don't have the capacity to respond to all these important issues in a very meaningful, effective way.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that First Nations were like we had two people?
Oh, it's weak, obviously.
Yeah.
It's obviously weak.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to capacity a lot of times, in a lot of instances. It's not that it's not an issue, it's just capacity a lot of times comes into play.
Have you consulted with among over the 600 reserves represented by the AFN? Have you consulted at all on this issue?
Not at all.
Not at all?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's something that has to get done because it is a huge issue, the fundamental right to life. And again, it's a capacity issue. Like we're getting ready for the environmental meetings coming up on, so that we're focusing energy on that. And then the First Minister's Conference coming up in July. And then it's basically a capacity issue. But so the answer is no, we have not been involved or consulted adequately.
Both of the Indigenous witnesses that came there highlighted other important areas of concern, noting that Indigenous peoples have the highest rates of suicide in Canada, with Indigenous young women at nearly 8 times the national average. Dr. LaFontaine expressed alarm that these consultations of the government may be ignoring the largest potential demographic that is eligible to pursue this service. Can you speak to any concerns that the AFN may have in regards to preventing suicide and the impact of legalizing assisted suicide?
The whole issue is mental health You know, in terms of when you look at holistic health, you think of mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, 4 quadrants to an individual's being, and they all have to be in balance. Mental health is a huge issue, and there's not enough adequate resources. The suicide rate is high amongst the Inuit. It's high amongst our youth, and it really has to be addressed. Where are the resources, the adequate resources to deal with this? So dealing with mental health issues and having a national suicide preventative strategy has to be put forward, and there has to be both the human and financial resources in place to deal with this, because it's epidemic amongst our territories and communities.
Thank you. One of the things that was talked about at this committee hearing was the use of palliative care, and I think you just addressed that a little bit, the 4 areas of life: the spiritual, the psychological, the physical health of these communities. What is it like in the Indigenous world, like the incorporation of the entire family into the beginning of life and the end of life decisions that are made within the Indigenous community?
It's a really deep question. How long do you want me to get into it?
You got 45 seconds.
It's again, wellness, child rearing. It goes from, we have different sections from birth, you know, like the quadrants again.
Yeah.
You know, 0 to 25 or 0. You have adolescents and teens. It's a whole cycle. And historically, we had child rearing practices and ways of raising children, and the children are gifts from the Creator. And the role of the grandparents was huge and key in raising the family as a unit. You know, so everything's been displaced.
Well,
You know,
perhaps I can join you and Don for coffee, and we can continue this conversation.
This is, yeah, I wish I could be more brevity, but these are such deep questions. I can't answer in 20 seconds. It's going to take a little longer sometimes. I apologize, Chair.
Thank you.
Good. I appreciate the depth of the question, though. That was great. So, Remy, 5 minutes, please.
Premièrement, je voudrais vous remercier d'avoir accepté notre invitation.
Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Je parle français petit peu.
I speak a little French. Oh, it's very good.
Merci. Tu es très important dans mes yeux, mon ami.
You're very important to my eyes, my friend. It's easier for me to speak French to ask you that kind of question. I represent one of 2 ridings in eastern Quebec, in Gaspésie, and in my riding, I'm...
So, I'll go in English. I'll go in English. That's fine. That's fine.
No.
So you help me. You help me there. If
Make sure he doesn't lose his time.
No, don't worry. We won't take any time. It's important. No, we'll get it working. And please go in French. It's
Okay.
Can you hear me, Chief? Can the interpreter? All right, let's go. So, thank you again for being here. As I was saying, I represent one of 2 ridings in Gaspésie in eastern Quebec. And I'm lucky enough in my riding to have 3 communities. During the election campaign, and even afterward, or even before rather, I spoke with Chief Martin and Chef Larocque multiple times. Those were excellent discussions and allowed me to better understand what are the issues with our Mi'kmaq communities. And among those issues, there's one that particularly interests me, among others. That's the question of language. And you mentioned it earlier. There are 58, at least, languages, Indigenous languages, with various dialects. So I'd like, if possible, to hear you speak about potential measures that could be taken to respond to the language needs in all of these communities. All right.
Bonne question, mon ami. The importance of language, and one way of measuring, because they're all at different levels. You know, studies have shown that out of the 58, only 3 will survive. Inuktitut, Cree, and Ojibwe. There's got to be a national revitalization strategy put in place. You know, it would be great if the government will announce, and that's something we want to work with Minister Joly on, and the Prime Minister is announcing a national revitalization Indigenous language strategy. That should happen. There should be strategies in place, models, nation by nation, to where they're stated. There's different systems or models that can be utilized to bring back, revitalize this Indigenous language, because they're all at different levels. Some have many speakers, some don't have. You need a mentor, tutor in some cases, a one that's fluent, matched up with a person that's interested in learning. You have different models that can be looked at. You have immersion programs that can be looked at. There's a great language program right now in British Columbia at the university, or in Victoria, at the museum, the Royal, the right word, Victoria. What's the right word of the museum in Victoria? The Royal Museum. It's there, and they have 34 Indigenous languages in British Columbia, but they have a model there that should be I encourage everybody to go see it, because they're doing a great job of revitalizing those, capturing. But that should be taken nationally. So the other 20-some plus languages that are left out should be included as part of that. So there's got to be a greater focus, and I urge the Crown, if they could expend as much energies and efforts as they did to kill the language through the residential schools, if they could expend as much energies as they did in that process, we would see a national strategy coming forth. Because it's so important to our identity. And our Indigenous languages should be viewed and looked upon as Canada's national treasures, because they aren't spoken anywhere else in the world. They're here. And if you lose them, they are lost forever. And that's the travesty. So we have to do as much we can to preserve and promote and enhance Indigenous languages. So I encourage the Mi'kmaq, the people, that's where our heads and hearts are at with it. And this is a big focus for all of us around this table, and we should do more energy to preserve it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, I'd like to share my time with Michael Anut. Michael wanted to ask a number of questions, so I'd like to share my time with Michael.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments on language. My wife is enrolled into the Language Revitalization Program, and I can attest that it's a very good program. I have a real concern over the issue of land claims and where things are going on that front. And even with some of the Aboriginal governments that have settled land claims, we're still hearing a lot of concern over financing and funding and honoring parts of the agreement. However, there is still a number of organizations that want to find their way forward in terms of settling the issues that are challenging them. And we're finding in Northwest Territories, where we have 5 major tribal councils, and they're in various stages of discussion on either land claims or self-government. They can't seem to find the resources, the time to really work in terms of what's needed in governance. They can't provide the people, they don't have the resources to provide programming and all these things in terms of housing, education. There's a shortage. So all their time is being spent on negotiations, land claims negotiations. In my area, the people I represent, there's a lot of different organizations, but I also belong to the Dehcho First Nations, who has been in negotiations for over 20-some years. And we want to see them move past that. And I think modern day land claims, modern day treaties are the way forward in terms of reconciliation. If people can move into a governance model where they can focus and look at issues that are challenging to people and deal with it at the community level, I think that would go a long ways. Do you envision setting up a mechanism such as been suggested, and I think has even been tried, like a deputy minister's oversight committee or boards and structures that provide political connections to the process, where you don't just take a bunch of negotiators, give them a mandate, put them in a room and say, don't come out until you're done, because usually they run into a real challenging issue where they can't make headway, yet we can't bring the leaders back into the room until. I'm hearing all kinds of different options out there, and I think there's some good ones. I'm not sure if your organization has looked at things of that nature.
There has to be an option other than the courts. Simple as that. And there has to be a political option put in place, and not the courts, because it's costly and time-consuming, and that's not the answer. So where's the dispute resolution mechanism that the Crown should be putting forward? What is the terms of reference for that mechanism? Is it a senior cabinet oversight committee? Possibly, because we're asking for that to be put in place as well to deal with all these Indigenous issues from the 5 priorities that the Prime Minister outlined. But there's got to be an oversight. You know, there should be new institutions of the Crown established. That should be looked at. And then again, I link it back to the laws and the policies that have to be updated. Because why it's taking so long? Because the current existing processes were based on flawed policies. That's the issue. It's taking so long because the terms of reference, authority, and mandates are based on flawed policies. That's what's got to change. And so there's got to be a process clearly established to breathe life into these things, because these are lawful claims. These are lawful obligations. And the longer it takes to settle, the more money it's going to cost the Crown. You know? That's the way we see it. So there's got to be processes established that will, and it's not the courts. That's what's got to be looked at. New systems, new processes, you know, and new ADRs with proper terms of reference, authority, and mandates, you know, that have to be struck. You got to restructure government. You got to look at even cabinet looking at oversight committees, if you will, but linked to the PCO, PMO, all those things have to be changed. So if I had a magic pen, I'd do it, but I don't have it right now. Soon, though.
Okay, thanks for that. And Charlie, thank you for allowing a full answer there. Charlie, you're the last on the order for questions, the formal order, but we'll go to the top and see if people have more questions to ask. And Kathy, if you wanted to come around, I can show you what we're working off of here. So please, Charlie, you have 3 minutes in this round.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions, and they regard children. In the communities I represent, children are being educated in dangerous conditions. Kashechewan, we were meeting with the students, and waterlogged tiles fell in the middle of the classroom in a talk about how they should be fighting for education rights, and we had to move out of the classroom. In Martin Falls, I'm getting calls from parents who are terrified because their kids are going to school where there's no sprinkler system. And what happens in a fire? That would be illegal in the provincial system, but it's just another day at Indian Affairs. And they don't even track they don't even track the conditions of the schools that they're supposed to be responsible for. So has AFN looked at what it'll take? Because I really don't think our communities can wait any longer. They need the action. They needed it last year. They needed it the year before. But they certainly can't wait another 10 or 15 years till Indian Affairs gets around to fixing these things, because children's lives are, in some cases, literally on the line.
No, all I can say is totally agree with you. You know, the schools that are the deplorable conditions, there's health and safety issues. That has to be addressed immediately. And we're going to continue to call on the Crown to do that, to address those things. You're going to lose another generation of children, if that's not addressed. And that's not acceptable in 2016 and beyond. So you address the on-reserve tuition, but you got to do the capital as well.
Yeah.
And there are priorities and hotspots across Canada. And we want to work in partnership with the government to make sure that that happens sooner than later. That's the way you get kids out of poverty, or people out of poverty, is a good education. That's just not acceptable.
Thank you, Chief. One of the reasons I got into politics, I was working with the Algonquin Nation. We went to meet an Indian Affairs Minister, a nice guy. And we had a question. We thought we'd get an answer on this. Well, why they took a child out of the community who had badly handicapped child and wouldn't pay special ed funding, but they'd ship that kid on a bus with an adult across the border into Ontario to the provincial system, pay the full shot, and the kid stayed out in the hallway all day with an adult watching him, put him back on the bus at the end of the day, and said to the Indian Affairs Minister, don't you think the money would be better spent just providing a special education service in the community? And he wouldn't give us a straight answer. And I remember thinking that day that if that's the answer, then that's not good enough. And yet 13 years later, we have the federal government going at the Human Rights Commission on a case of denial of adequate special ed service. So in the communities I represent, where some kids are not even getting into school because they don't have the funding, they're being denied what every other child takes for granted. Is the AFN a participant in this Human Rights Tribunal? Have you heard whether or not the government is going to back down and stop fighting the children on this, or is this going to be another long, drawn-out battle like Cindy Blackstock's battle?
The AFN is party to that. 7 years ago, the AFN and the Family Child Caring Society jointly did the case to the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. And so when that came down, the decision came down, discriminatory funding practices, we knew that that's what would happen because that's the case. Discriminatory funding has been in place. And that, again, it was clear from the ruling that the Crown has to change its practices, when it comes to children. It's discriminatory funding. So we're pushing to make sure that it's addressed. And we're pushing as well to make sure the Crown doesn't appeal. Because again, you talk about reconciliation. You talk about repairing the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the Crown. It should not be appealed. And so we're putting pen to paper to make sure that it's not appealed. We're doing that. There's the issue, though, of Jordan's principle. And that's what should be respected, honored, and implemented. That it keeps coming back to that for children's care. Make sure that the child gets the services. When it comes to special education, we were always the brown cash cow as Indian people. And our children would be classed as special ed, special learners, because the tuition goes up from the $6,500 per child to maybe $10,000 or $11,000 per child. That's the system that was there. And that's what has to be changed and overhauled. So it's not going to be enough just to increase the fiscal resources in place. The overall system has to be overhauled and start moving and working in partnership to Indian control of Indian education, no question, making sure standards are in place, but respecting that First Nations control because our kids aren't dumb. They're valuable individuals. And it's just the way the system was set up. They were the cash cows. And that's passé now. We're going to move way beyond that.
Okay, thanks, Charlie, for the question and for the answer, Chief. We've got about 7 minutes left. We've gone through our formal question order. I think we'd like to make use of the next few minutes before we say goodbye for some additional questions. So I'm going to propose that we go back to the top of the order. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so feel free to pass if you don't have a question you want to ask. We'll go for about 2 minutes, I guess, for these questions. And Mike McLeod is at the top of the order, but he's ceded his time to Mike Bossio. Did you know that, Mike?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you very much, Chief, for being here. I'm as Arnold said, I'm very, very pleased to be able to address you here this afternoon, and really appreciate your time for being here. One of the issues we've talked about education for the Aboriginal community and bringing that up, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, everything that has been discussed here this afternoon, I agree with completely. But another avenue that isn't discussed as much is that we also need to educate the settler population as to the historical injustices, as to the plight of First Nations, and as to the cultural values. And I really want to emphasize the cultural values that the pride that that should be instilled within all of our peoples as to the historical and cultural heritage of First Nations, just as is the case in New Zealand. I use an example. I mean, that is front and center of their national, their nationhood. And I think that in order to better establish that relationship, that nation-to-nation relationship, it's equally important to make sure that we educate our settler peoples as well. And I think it's, but in the past, that's always been done by settlers. We've defined the curriculum. We've defined how we're going to provide that education in that historical and cultural context, and have done a very poor job of it. I just reflect back on my own education and the lack thereof, actually. And so I guess I'd like to put it to you: is our First Nations ready to? I know you've got a lot to take care of on your own front, but are you in a position to be able to assist settlers to help to define that curricula, to deliver the materials that would be needed to define that curricula, and what are your thoughts on that in general? Thank you.
Great question. Educating the settlers. It's interesting, your terminology. And when we deal with the premiers, we ask them to change the curriculums for sure, to teach treaties and inherent rights and Aboriginal rights. So all schools, for example, in Saskatchewan, have to teach treaty rights, all the treaties. Same starting in Manitoba. So changing the curriculum, not only on reserve but off reserve. So change one, to teach treaty and Aboriginal rights and title. That has to be taught. The second piece is to start changing curriculums to teach the impacts of the residential schools, the history about colonization and oppression, and the impacts of the residential schools, the intergenerational effects of the residential schools. Those have to be taught not in all the schools from K to 12, you know. It's also got to be taught to the immigrants coming into Canada. What's their orientation? You know, they swear their allegiance to the laws of Canada. There's a recommendation that TRC calls to action to swear allegiance to the treaties as well. Like, so there's education awareness for the immigrants coming in through that process when they become official Canadians. All 338 members of Parliament should go through a misconception training. When you get elected to a member of Parliament, I would love to see, you know, and I've been asked by certain members of Parliament to come to do a misconception training for us because we don't know anything about inherent rights or treaty rights or what this nation-to-nation relationship may look like. So that has to be done as well. So I totally agree with the question. Changing the curriculums now, right across Canada. There's some things that can be done on a national perspective for the 338 members of Parliament, new immigrants coming into Canada, is that education awareness will lead to understanding, will lead to action.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I think we have time for a final question, and this one, following the previous order, goes to Kathy, and we'll try to keep it as short if we could.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. As I was listening to the language, I had a conversation, and in partial jest, I said, well, one component of this strategy should be Rosetta Stone, and he says that there is one for Cree already, and I was like, you're kidding. So anyway, I just, you know, I think not only sort of traditional ways, but the opportunity to sort of modernize, and because children love that kind of piece. But anyway, I have to get back to my natural resources piece because I've had a lot of conversations, and I would like to know, have you taken a formal position? I can't remember from your position statements, but I know there's some groups that are very interested in being supported in equity positions versus I know that there is other First Nations groups looking in terms of they call it an Aboriginal resource tax, and if you could just maybe spend a minute or two talking about both those concepts and where the AFN sits on them.
We support all the above as AFN. You know, we support the chiefs that want to look at equity ownership in some of the major projects. We look at some of the chiefs that look at an Aboriginal resource tax, or if you're cutting across Treaty 4 territory, a pipeline did. We looked at a Treaty 4 tax where all the 34 bands about 10 years ago got $100,000 from this pipeline company, kind of like shut up and go away money, but there was a Treaty 4 tax in place, so precedent has been set. But we also support those ones that don't want this thing. We're respecting that. So as an AFN, we can't take a formal position either way. I'm going to keep facilitating the bringing together of these interested parties to find common ground. Always a balance between the environment and the economy. That's our position as AFN, respecting the rights and title holders. That's all as National Chief I can do. I can't say, going to do this, but I'm going to facilitate bringing together because we want to create the wealth as well and the jobs as well, but not at any cost. It's that balance, long-term sustainable economic development strategies. That's going to be our position going forward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, if we were following the order, I said we would be done after that question. If we were following the order, it would be Charlie's question. However, Don has made a special request for a final question. And Charlie, not to put you on the spot, would you be okay with that?
Well, my concern is we have to go in camera. I would have given up my spot to go in camera because we have to get our business done. So my concern is I don't want to be.
Okay, I see Don agreeing there, so that's fine.
But we got to get some work done because time's ticking and we have a lot of stuff to do.
Yep.
So,
okay. Well, National Chief Bellegarde, on behalf of the Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development Committee, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. McClare and Mr. Fineday, for joining us. You've given us a lot to think about, and you've provided some great resources for us. Please.
I have a question.
That's good.
Are you going to be changing your name?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
We had a conversation with the minister just last week about that very thing, and we're on the case.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much. And I'm just going to suspend proceedings for a couple of minutes while we transition. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.